Have you ever been in that spot, where you really desperately want to tell someone what's going on inside, what you're feeling, but
Okay.
like your body just freezes up, stops you cold?
Oh, absolutely. That is the core tension, isn't it, of human connection?
Yeah, this deep desire we have for intimacy, real profound closeness, but then there's this almost biological fear of being exposed.
It's a huge psychological friction point. Researchers actually call it the vulnerability paradox, and for good reason. It's like vulnerability is the very first thing I look for in you.
Right, that sign of realness.
Exactly, that spark of honesty, that depth. But then it's the absolute last thing I want you to see in me. It feels way too risky.
We hear it all the time, though. Be vulnerable. Vulnerability is strength. It's the currency of connection. But our gut, our instincts, they often scream the opposite, don't they? Like it's a fast track to getting hurt or
Yeah.
rejected.
Betrayal, pain, it feels dangerous.
So how do we figure that out? Today, that's our mission. We want to cut through some of that noise. We're pulling together insights from emotional intelligence work like Brene Brown's stuff, but also digging into the hard science psychobiological studies on trauma neurochemistry.
Yeah, we really want to map out the difference. What makes vulnerability true vulnerability, the kind that builds trust, versus just accidental oversharing?
And to do that, we have to get into how safety, like perceived safety, even down to our hormones, how that fundamentally changes our ability to open up, especially when things get tense, like in a conflict.
Right, because that's when it matters most.
Okay, so let's lay the groundwork, the biological foundation. We talk a lot about everyday stress, but maybe to really grasp why connection is so vital, we need to look at the extreme end, like trauma.
Yeah, looking at trauma is incredibly revealing. It shows us exactly what the body's trying to protect itself from, and crucially, why connection isn't just nice, it's essential.
So what's happening in the brain during something traumatic, something so intense it literally changes us.
Well, when the brain faces this acute, overwhelming danger, the memories that form,
Hmm.
they're different. They don't get stored like a normal story, a narrative memory with a beginning, middle, and end.
Okay.
Instead, they get indelibly etched, is the term used, often without the context of time or place.
Meaning it doesn't feel like it happened back then.
Well, yeah,
It feels now.
precisely. It feels active, alive, like the trauma is happening anew each day, as one source put it. There's this powerful quote from Van Gogh, actually, describing a lasting psychological wound.
Oh, wow.
He said, "It is and will remain a wound which I live above, but which is there deep down and cannot heal years from now. It will be what it was the first day." Just captures that feeling, doesn't it?
It really does. And this isn't rare, is it? This kind of high-stakes stress.
Yeah.
The research suggests it's actually quite common.
Frighteningly common. Yeah, there's extensive research, a lot out of the Netherlands, showing that about 80% of people will face a traumatic event in their lifetime. 80%.
That's huge.
It is. Now, not everyone develops a chronic condition, of course, but around 10% do go on to develop PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So this system in our brains designed for extreme stress. It's getting tested a lot.
Okay, so we mostly know about the first part of that stress response, right? The fight or flight. Amygdala fires up, cortisol, adrenaline, all that. But once the danger's gone, what's supposed to happen? How does the brain, switch off that alarm?
And that is where we see this profound link, the evolutionary tie between biological recovery and social connection. Because getting back to normal heart rate slowing down, cortisol dropping, that's the job of a whole different system.
Okay.
It's regulated by the oxytocin system.
Oxytocin, right? The love hormone or cuddle chemical.
Yeah.
We usually think of it with like childbirth, breastfeeding, maybe falling in love.
That's exactly right. For ages, its known roles were mostly reproductive, stimulating contractions, lactation. Interestingly, it was used in cattle farming for decades just for that, stimulating milk letdown.
Huh. Didn't know that.
Yeah. But the really critical insight, the big picture view, is this. The oxytocin system, the very thing that dials down the stress response biologically and creates feelings of bonding and confidence, it can only be activated in socially favorable circumstances.
Well, hang on. Let me just pause on that because
Yeah.
that's massive.
Yeah.
Biological recovery is conditional. On
Yeah.
social safety, it's not automatic.
It's not automatic. Think about it from an evolutionary perspective.
Okay.
If you're alone in the wild after something terrible happens, are you safe? Probably not. Your body needs to stay on high alert, hypervigilant.
Right. The danger might still be there.
Exactly. But the second you're in a safe social setting with your tribe, your family, your group evolution signals, okay, the collective is here, the immediate threat is likely past, you can finally stand down. And then the oxytocin system can get to work cleaning up those stress hormones.
So things like just talking, having a conversation, or physical touch, cuddling. You mentioned petting a dog. Even the sources say positive interactions online, like tweeting. These aren't just nice to haves. They're actually triggering hormones that help our bodies recover.
Precisely. They are biological signals that return the body to equilibrium. When that system's active, stress hormones go down, heart rate lowers, blood pressure drops, even immune reactions improve.
Wow.
And the flip side is just as stark, a lack of social support. It's consistently one of the biggest risk factors for developing PTSD after trauma. Social connection isn't just comforting, it's literally medicine for biological and psychological repair.
Okay, that sets things up perfectly then. If connection is this biological must-have, how do we actually do it? How do we share ourselves without just like fishing for validation or accidentally dumping too much on someone and push them away?
Yes. This is the practical challenge. We absolutely have to get clear on the language, differentiate the ways we share.
Yeah, because people mix them up all the time.
Constantly. There's a definite hierarchy or maybe different levels of sharing, and they aren't the same at all.
Right. Okay, let's break it down. Starting with maybe the most basic, openness.
Openness, yeah. Think of this as the baseline. It's being expressive, not reserved. Voicing opinions, sharing facts about yourself, things that are pretty low risk.
Like what you did over the weekend, or your opinion on a movie.
Exactly. Stuff you might share with an acquaintance, a colleague, maybe a casual friend. The risk is minimal because you're sharing data, information, not really the core of your emotional world. If they misuse it somehow, well, it doesn't hurt that much.
Okay, that makes sense. So then level 2 is vulnerability, the big one.
The big one, this is where it gets more intense, much riskier. Vulnerability means sharing something deeply personal, revealing a genuine weakness, maybe admitting a mistake, expressing a need that hasn't been met.
Okay, and the key differences.
The key difference is it requires a safe space. It absolutely demands trust, a deep bond. This is for your trusted friends, your family, your partner. Because the information you're sharing, if it gets thrown back in your face or used against you, it could cause real emotional harm, significant harm.
Right, the stakes are much higher. Which brings us to the third type, the one people often mistake for vulnerability, oversharing, or splurging, as some sources call it.
Yeah, oversharing or splurging. This is sharing that vulnerable level information, the deep stuff, but it's incongruous or inappropriate for the context or level of trust in the relationship.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about the cashier you barely know suddenly telling you their entire divorce story in detail, or a brand new colleague immediately launching into their childhood trauma on day one. It's high-risk information dropped into a low-trust environment.
Right, okay, I can picture that. And it's not just awkward, is it? It actually puts a burden on the person hearing it.
A huge burden, and Brené Brown really nails this. Oversharing, she argues, often comes with an ulterior motive. There's an expectation attached.
An expectation of what?
Of immediate emotional caretaking, validation, support. You're sharing this super intimate thing, implicitly demanding a certain reaction from the other person. You're trying to fast forward intimacy, basically. Force a connection that hasn't actually been built yet.
So it's less about genuine sharing and more about getting something back, like a transaction.
Yeah, exactly. Brown is very clear. Oversharing isn't vulnerability. She says it's the opposite. It's armor. It's a shield you throw up, hoping to force a positive reaction to make yourself feel better or less anxious.
Wow, armor. That's powerful.
And what happens when it goes wrong? When the person doesn't react the way the oversharer hoped?
It's usually pretty devastating for both people involved. The oversharer who didn't get that instant, deep validation they were craving, maybe the listener just went quiet or said, oh, wow, that's heavy.
Yeah.
They feel incredibly exposed, humiliated often.
Yeah.
And the poor receiver, they're often just mystified. They feel helpless, maybe a bit trapped, and definitely burdened with this expectation of emotional labor they never signed up for. It pushes people away.
Okay. So if vulnerability isn't armor, isn't a demand, what is it? What's the defining feature of true vulnerability? True vulnerability is about consciously choosing not to hide your authentic self, your thoughts, feelings, needs, opinions. And this is critical, being willing to accept the consequences no matter what.
Accepting the consequences.
Yes. You offer it as a gift of self-awareness, hoping for connection, but without demanding a specific outcome. You accept the risk that it might not be received well or that the relationship might change. That willingness to risk without expectation is the bright line between genuine connection building and an emotional transaction.
That distinction, accepting the consequences, feels fundamental. Okay, let's shift gears slightly and take this into probably the most charged setting, romantic relationships,
Yeah.
specifically conflict.
Ah, yes,
It's
conflict.
inevitable, right?
All right.
In any close relationship, arguments happen, disagreements, hurt feelings. And in those moments, partners have to decide, do I express this difficult feeling or do I swallow it?
And this is where power dynamics really come into play. Conflicts make power imbalances really visible. You've got the principle of least interest, basically, the person who feels less dependent on the relationship, maybe feels they have more options outside of it. They inherently hold more power in that dynamic.
And for the partner who feels less powerful, less secure, expressing difficult emotions during a conflict feels incredibly risky.
Extremely risky. If you feel powerless, you're highly motivated to inhibit your emotions, to suppress what you're really feeling. Why? To avoid potential negative consequences. Punishment, maybe? Exploitation, or even the relationship ending altogether if your partner reacts badly. If speaking your truth feels like it could lead to disaster, you're going to bite your tongue.
So the fear of vulnerability gets amplified in relationships where power feels unequal.
Yes.
The research you looked at introduced something that can change this dynamic entirely, like a relationship superpower.
Yes. A crucial moderating factor, perceived partner responsiveness, PPR.
Perceived partner responsibility.
What is that? It's not about the objective facts of the power balance. It's your subjective feeling, your perception, that your partner provides care, validation, and understanding, especially when things are tough. Do you feel like they get you, support you, and are genuinely trying to understand your side, even when you disagree?
So it's about feeling emotionally safe with them.
Precisely. If you perceive your partner as highly responsive, you feel emotionally safe.
And this is where the studies on couples got really interesting, right? They basically asked, if you feel less powerful in your relationship, does that automatically mean you shut down emotionally during conflict?
Yeah, and the results across several large studies were incredibly consistent and honestly quite hopeful. The answer was no, not necessarily. Powerlessness only leads to emotional suppression and shutting down when the person also perceives a lack of PPR.
Wait, really? So your actual objective low power,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't dictate whether you suppress your feelings? And this is the big if you feel your partner is responsive and caring.
That's the core finding. The subjective perception of safety, of responsiveness, overrides the objective power dynamic.
Wow.
When you perceive high levels of PPR, when you genuinely trust your partner, cares about your feelings, validates them even if they disagree, and really tries to understand, that feeling of safety empowers you. It gives you the courage to express yourself. Even if you know objectively you might be the more dependent partner or have less say in other areas, safety trumps power imbalance when it comes to emotional expression and conflict.
That's huge for relationship health.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about the other side? What happens when that safety, that PPR, is low? What are the consequences of suppressing your emotions during conflict because you don't feel safe?
Well, the consequences are pretty bad for actually resolving anything. When you suppress your emotions because you fear a negative reaction, it cripples your ability to engage constructively. You can't really generate action plans or develop solutions together.
So you just shut down.
You shift into passive mode. Specifically, individuals with low power who also perceive low PPR. They rely heavily on passive conflict resolution responses.
Okay, what does passive look like in an argument if something important is bothering you?
The main passive response identified is loyalty. Now, this doesn't mean fidelity. In this context, loyalty means passively waiting for things to magically get better on their own,
Uh-huh.
saying absolutely nothing about the actual problem, or just quickly forgiving and dropping the issue entirely, even though nothing was resolved, just smoothing it over to avoid the confrontation.
So avoiding the necessary conversation.
Exactly. They avoid the active response needed, which the research calls voice.
And voices.
Voice is actually discussing the issue, trying to figure out solutions together, pushing for change or understanding. When that low-power person suppresses because they don't feel safe, low PPR, they choose silence and passive endurance, loyalty over the risk and speeding up voice.
Which means the thing causing the hurt or the problem, it never gets addressed. It just festers. That sounds exactly like that negative vicious circle the sources mention.
It absolutely is. The suppression, born from a very understandable fear of a non-responsive partner, ensures the core issues remain buried. The less powerful person's needs are systematically ignored, the problems don't get fixed, and that obviously damages their well-being and, ultimately, the health and longevity of the relationship itself.
Okay, so wrapping this all together, this deep dive has really connected the dots, hasn't it? From our basic biology, how our bodies need connection, specifically that oxytocin-driven feeling of social safety just to recover from stress.
And then clarifying what really vulnerability looks like, it's that intentional choice to share authentically, crucially, combined with accepting the risk, accepting the consequences. It's not armor, it's not a demand.
Right. And then bringing it home to our most important relationships, especially during conflict.
Yeah.
The research is just so clear. It's that feeling of safety, that perceived partner responsiveness, feeling cared for, validated, understood. That's the key. That's what allows someone, even if they feel less powerful, to find their voice.
Knowing that, you can really start to assess the health of your own connections using that metric. How responsive do I perceive my partner to be? How safe do I feel expressing myself?
Because the study showed again and again, when that perceived responsiveness was high, the actual power level didn't predict emotional freedom anymore. Safety overrode power,
Exactly.
which leaves us with a really big thought, doesn't it? Almost philosophical. If perceived safety is more important than actual power in determining whether we feel free to be ourselves in a relationship, should we maybe shift our focus instead of constantly striving for some kind of perfect, elusive, equal power balance? Should the real goal be guaranteeing universal responsiveness, making sure our partner always feels that deep sense of care, validation, and understanding from us? What would our relationships look like if maximizing PPR, maximizing that perceived safety, was the #1 rule in how we interact every single day?
That's definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.